I'm really not trying to sound like a dick or anything, because this is going to sound like duh. The tip to creating contrast in a similar section of music is choose something and then change it. So with creating contrast, a bunch of really simple things you can do. First, you won't get a lot of contrast just by adding layers. So think about like you have like a 100% pie all the time, right? If you have one sound playing on its own in your track, it's using 100% of the arrangement in that point in time. The more things you add, the less percent each individual element can use. Obviously, if you have something mixed so it's the loudest thing in the track, it will like use more. If you have things that are sat in the back, they'll use less of the percentage. But if you're getting to a point where there's like a ton of layers and you're trying to create contrast just by like switching a layer off and on, that's not going to create like the contrast. So think cubist. What are like the big moves you can make? Can you switch almost everything off? Can you switch almost everything on? Or if you have something that's just like a few elements and they're working together, like what's a radical transformation you can do on one of them? That can be something like really easy stuff. Like you might have noticed one of the things I've got going on in the background here. This is a bit more subtle, so this isn't like massive changes, but I have this shaker and I just have like these little double time things here. So just like without thinking about it, you know, I'm just putting a couple of things in here that just change and help refresh your ear. But the other thing to do is you can create a massive contrast by changing the parts. So let's say we keep these beats all the same, right? Let's just loop up a 4-bar thing here. And we're not gonna bring anything in and out, but what happens if we take these, we'll just color them something different. And we're just gonna change a part. At the moment it's syncopated, let's make it like really straight. We're moving our emphasis from the 16ths onto the 8ths and the quarters. We don't even need to listen to this. Like if you're ever in a position where you're like, oh, I'm trying to create some changes in the track and I don't really, everything I try kind of sucks, literally try doing something when you're not even listening to it. So now if we check this, let's see if we have any contrast. Skeleton keys are saying if you remove something, replace it for contrast. That's a really good strategy. And also, if you're really looking for impact, like removing something so that nothing happens and then bring something else in. Like remember, you can get massive impact by taking stuff out. A lot of tracks have the bit where it's like going, ah, that's crazy, it's crazy. And then it just goes vroom, and like simplifies. Do you know what I mean? And the impact of the space will like make people go, whoa. I think people forget that a lot, impact by switching things off, because you'll hear things differently. And then also, again, remember that pie that's at like 100%. If you really simplify, so you're going from like 20 elements each using 5%, for example, down to 3 elements that are using 33% each, then it kind of gives you the room to build up again. Other really good tip for contrast is have one thing that happens that kind of goes whoosh, that basically distracts your ears. I have a groove that is working phenomenally and I don't want to go and like switch it up and give it a whole different feel in one section. I want to kind of keep the hypnotic thing, but I don't want it to get boring. So this is where you get into turnarounds or fills. It can be the elements themselves changing, or you could do, let's just make something out of one that we made here. We'll go into our playlist. Oh yeah, these things here. So you could decide, right? We'll copy that, we'll throw this on a new track. We'll just make this as like a really basic example. Really basic example here. You just have something kind of come in and take over, and then you could literally on your beats and everything else just do like 2-beat kind of mute here, and then let's just hype up this reverse. So yeah, and in script tech, that's a really good point. Interesting advantages of lots of slow modulation. I think that will really help like a track feel alive, right? But the thing that we need to be really careful of, especially if we're making music on our own, is that we will get so zoned into every single subtlety. Like a little change, like one thing going, ow, whoa, ow, whoa, we'll be like, whoa, that'll be like the equivalent of, to us when we're making this stuff on loop, to like the chorus in Smells Like Teen Spirit. These changes that we get so zoned into basically won't have the impact we think on the listener unless they happen to get us zoned in. And obviously there are always obvious exceptions. So I'd think about that kind of stuff as being great to help stuff stop feel so static. But if we're really looking for contrast, like those bold moves are what's gonna help. Again, this is where the answer to that question is kind of, it sounds dickish, but it's just literally like change something and be bold in those changes. Like I think it's, again, especially you really have to get used to understanding your own psychology and your own subjectivity when you're making music and how that's different to the subjectivity of a listener, right? It's a lot like when we're learning to mix. For example, in a room like this, I could be playing stuff on the huge speakers. There's also under there, that big black shape is like a massive subwoofer. So I can get really used to how a mix sounds in here because it's like banging and make it just sound amazing just in this context. Then you take it somewhere else and play it and it sounds kind of terrible. Same thing can happen with your arrangements and your production. So you get used to like, again, you're super zoned in. All those little changes are like, whoa to you. And you have to remember that listeners won't hear that the same way. Again, pinches of salt, there's a lot of nuance in there. Okay, so skeleton. Overuse of percussion seems to be a common thread. Throw so much at the wall, feel too attached to delete parts. Well, have a section where all your percussion is playing, and then have a and then cut it. Do you know what I mean? And then just go back to like kick drum and bass, and it'll be like, whoa! And then that will let you bring it all in again. And getting used to that, like you have to actually practice arranging like that, practice building out your tracks. I think you had such a good point there. You feel too attached to delete parts. What you really need to think about, a really great way of framing this is that you've made all these amazing parts, but once they've all been in for a while, people get used to them and then they have no impact anymore. So you want to create the situation where you can kind of bring them all in and let them have impact again. If you make something you really love, you want to create the situation for it to come back over and over and over again. And I keep mentioning Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's such a great example of a track with contrast. It went at the start, drum fill, it all kicks in, everyone's like, yeah. And then if they're like, this is so awesome, I'm gonna keep it going the whole track. And if the whole track was just like the full riff at full volume, like it would suck, right? It wouldn't have had any impact. So even if it's like a totally different genre, you can really learn these lessons. You can have the best riff in the world, but no matter what, after like 8 or 16 bars, people are going to be bored of it. So you have to create these resets so that you can bring it back. I like talking about this kind of stuff because I think it's hard to download a good arrangement. You know what I mean? You can download a compressor, you can download a distortion plugin, you can put reverb on things. Like it's really easy to like focus on the equipment and go like, oh, the equipment will make my track good, but what's going to make your track good is like switching stuff off and on. Hey, we hope you enjoyed that video. A couple of more links here for some talks we think you'll like. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and otherwise head over to completeproducer.net so that you can connect with other music making geniuses from all over the world. We'll see you there.